Welcome everybody to our next SELDay Summit session. This one on SEL Goes to University, how higher education is engaging social emotional learning. I'm Jim Vetter. I'm the Executive Director of the Social Emotional Learning Alliance for the United States. And along with the Urban Assembly and 6 Seconds as our international partner, we are the folks who have been organizing this SELDay celebration. It is fabulous to be with you and to see so many people here from all across the country and all around the world. As we're kicking off this session, please take a moment right now to type in the chat. Let us know, where are you from? Where are you connecting from today? Where are you around the country, around the world? Let us know what organization are you from and what is your role or title. And go ahead and feel free to type that in the chat now. And we're just going to pull up some slides here because we want to start off by just thanking the folks who are making SELDay possible. SELDay 2024, today's students, tomorrow's leaders. We'd like to give a big thank you to our SELDay sponsors. And please, when the sessions are over, please go over to selday.org/exhibit. You can find the Summit Expo session there. You can find more information about our advocate sponsor, Antioch University, our supporters, Second Step, Pure Edge, Harmony Academy from National University, as well as Responsive Classroom Fly 5, the Ruler Program from the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, and Satchel Pulse. And we'd really like to give an extra special thank you out to Antioch University as our advocate sponsor. Antioch University's mission is to provide learner-centered education to empower students with the knowledge and skills to lead meaningful lives and advance social, racial, economic, and environmental justice. And Antioch has partnered with 6 Seconds around some higher ed programs specifically focused around SEL and social justice, including one of the very few doctoral programs specifically in SEL any place in the world. So please do go over and check out their exhibit page and learn more about what Antioch has to offer. And today's session is SEL Goes to University, how higher education is engaging social emotional learning. And I'd like to pass things along to Josh Friedman from 6 Seconds to kick off our panel.
Higher education and social emotional learning. There's so much for us to talk about here. I am the CEO of 6 Seconds, which is a nonprofit working around the world on developing emotional intelligence, and we work in every sector, including education. What we found is that adult-first SEL seems to be what really works in K-12 spaces, which led us to start saying, well, what's happening in higher ed? And together with several colleagues, we've now for over 6 years organized an annual, every 2-year conference on emotional intelligence in higher education. And some of the people who are on the panel with today have been part of that. But they're all working in super interesting, powerful ways of shaping the social and emotional environment in higher education. So panelists, welcome. And I would like to ask you to introduce yourselves with a one-word answer. Tell us what's up in higher education in one word. And in addition to your one word, introduce yourself. So, Ashley, Dr. Finley, can I ask you to go first?
Sure. I'm delighted to give a shot at modeling this. I'm Ashley Finley. I'm the Vice President of Research and Senior Advisor to the President at the American Association of Colleges and Universities. We serve about 900 colleges and universities across the United States and internationally across all sectors of higher education. And my one word is storytelling.
Thank you, Jasmine. How about you? What's your intro and your word of what's up in higher ed?
Hi, my name is Jasmine Garrett. I am a sophomore at Tufts University, majoring in education and child study human development. And My one word is togetherness in higher ed.
Awesome. Greg?
Hey, everybody. Happy SEL Day. My name is Greg Lucas. I'm the Director of Social and Emotional Learning for New Visions for Public Schools in New York City. And I'm also a doctoral student with Antioch University, focusing on social and emotional learning. And my word, let's get a little spicy. I think my word is irrelevance.
Bernardo?
Hi, everyone. Happy SELDay from Mexico. So, very glad to be here. I am the co-director of SELDay in Mexico, SELDay in Social, Emotional, and Ethical Learning. This is a model designed for schools and school systems all around the world, coordinated by Emory University. So, we are representatives here in Mexico working hard with pre-service teachers right now. And my word for today to share with you is will.
Tim, over to you.
Happy SELDay, colleagues. Tim Eatman is my name. I serve as the inaugural dean of the Honors Living Learning Community at Rutgers University, Newark, and a professor of urban education there. I'm an educational sociologist. I also have the really great pleasure of working with Dr. Finley as a member of the board of the American Association of Colleges and Universities. Reimagining is my word. Yes.
All right, my word. Today's show is brought to you by the word. My word is wobbling. And I already introduced myself, but I will also say shout out to colleagues from Columbia Teachers College. I'm an adjunct there, and we have a wonderful project there to support aspiring school principals in growing their emotional intelligence capabilities. Dr. Lorea Martinez, Michael Eatman, and I teach that class, and it is such a treat to get to do that work in that space. And in addition, I'm an adjunct at Antioch University and get to work in the supporting students in our doctoral program. I'm not a member of the academy. I am really a practitioner, but I get to kind of put my toes into the academy. So it's a privilege to get to be with these esteemed folks. I would like to go to the topic of well-being. And let's again start with you, Ashley. What are you seeing around well-being? What's the data, either quantitative or emotional data, that you're noticing around well-being in colleges and universities?
Well, there's no question that over the last couple of decades that we've seen higher incidences of student mental illness, students coming to campus already presenting with the need for antidepressants, antipsychotics, right? So and coupled with increasing levels of anxiety and feelings of isolation. I feel like in thinking about this question, it's just not hard to Google any one of array of statistics around what this issue is, and to see both what our sense of the wider social circumstance is around mental illness in the United States and how that's manifesting into higher education. I think as I thought about how I might respond to this, I thought maybe one of the more compelling things to say, though, is something that I learned a long time ago from a wonderful sociologist named Corey Keyes, who said the absence of mental illness isn't the presence of mental health. And one of the ways in which I think these conversations have been so powerful for me, and in the great pleasure that I've had working with Tim over a number of years around these issues as well, is really thinking about how do we take a conversation that might start with mental illness and frame it as one around mental health, and really creating ecosystems on our campuses that are supporting students, all students, in their ability to flourish, to thrive, to belong. These feel like the shift in the conversation that needs to happen. Campuses are in such a mode of being reactive to the crisis situation on their campus, right? That's going to be a deficit of counselors that they have to talk with students. It's a deficit of time to make sure that advisors are interacting, all sorts of a number of issues, and simply lacking the time and the infrastructure to really take a proactive stance in which we're talking about an ecosystem dedicated to wellness.
Jasmine, I'd like to just go to you to get a different kind of data. As you think about your community on campus, the undergrads that you interact with, what's the kind of emotional vibe?
The vibe right now is pretty tense. I'm gonna be frank. With the with a lot of current events that's happening right now, especially like with wars happening in Palestine and in Israel, there's been like many protests going on and a lot of students just speaking out on how they feel and talking with their peers about it. And it makes the environment very tense because there's opposing sides and people don't feel the same way. And even prior to this war, there were a number of incidents where there was anti-Semitic hate and language going on and spread around the campus for whatever reason that may be. But I know that for this year specifically, it's been very tense around the campus. And it's just like not the togetherness that I said that we had.
Yeah. Aspirational togetherness. Yeah. So, I mean, when we put those two things together, right, we get this tension, this polarization, this uncertainty together with the data on mental health and well-being. It's not just students, right? We can look at administrators. Tim, put on your hat as a senior leader in a higher ed institution for a moment. How is the well-being of administrators?
I think that some of the same questions that we see and challenges with the students are prevalent among administrators. I am reflecting on several terrible things that have shown up in higher education spaces around particularly women of color, taking their lives, dropping dead, at young ages. And, that sounds extreme, but when you think about, the relationship between the kind of shift in our society around the opportunity for people to actually name wellness challenges and the prevalence of these incidents, it really becomes challenging. Josh, it's one of the reasons why, at least on my team, we're so careful to tune into each other. How you doing, man? Hey doc, you got to eat lunch. So there's more to be said, but I'll stop there.
I want to just pivot the question slightly, and I want to ask everyone here who's interacting in the chat to help us out with this question as well. So Bernardo, you operate in a place that has some similarities and differences to the schools where our other panelists are typically working. So if you had a emotional barometer and you could kind of read that weather vane and you could say, well, in the campuses that I'm interacting with, what would be the emotional barometer? What would it say?
That would be very low, because in addition to all those things that my colleagues have mentioned, we started in a program in a pre-service training college, which located in a city which just the main industry went broke. So in addition to everything else, the economy is really suffering there. But you see, in this being in this such a terrible situation leads you to think about like solutions. And we have found an incredibly positive and constructive attitude towards all these efforts to bring social emotional learning to pre-service teachers. The school has been incredibly responsive. They have a very strong leadership, and of course, many people in the community are joining efforts. So we're trying to bring something good out of all of this evil which is going on right there. But again, let's try to make something, get something positive out of this. And I think the right people is leading this effort there, and we're going in that direction, I think.
Greg, what's the barometer say?
The barometer, it's not looking good. I think there's a lot of clouds, and we're not sure of the direction that we're heading. I really appreciate Jasmine's perspective. I get to wear kind of two hats. One is I'm currently a doctoral student, right? And then the other is in my work at New Visions, we're all about preparing our young people for life after high school, and what are the skills that they really need to navigate this world successfully. And as we see more and more young people transition into the college environment, we are seeing affirmative action policies being rolled back. We're seeing DEI policies being banned in many universities. And for a lot of our young people who are transitioning into the college space, these things, they didn't just represent protocols and policies. They were people. They were safe spaces. They were places where people could feel seen, could feel heard. And so we're seeing a divestment of services and resources for young people who really leaned on those things to affirm their identity and to be able to find a safe space, especially if they were entering into spaces that were very different from the communities that they have left. And so I think that, now more than ever, young people, as well as myself as a doctoral student, we're looking for community. And those things might not exist in constructed spaces at the universities and the colleges. And so we are looking to create those things on our own, whether it's informally creating affinity group spaces, because we need those things. We need the relational aspect of the learning environment is so critically important. I remember Dr. James Comer 50 years ago, said, no significant learning happens without significant relationships, right? And we know now, right, with like researchers like Mary Helen and Mordino Yang, we understand the neuroscience behind what he was saying so long ago. And so we're looking to understand, if we know that about learning, how are we recreating and redesigning the learning space to truly meet young people where they are, but then also to prepare them for the world that they are inheriting, because as adults, we have not done a good job of giving them a world that they can run with.
I just want to take a moment, and use some of my emerging SEL skills. And I'm imagining, as I hear you all talking, I'm imagining what it's like to be a leader in higher ed, to be a student in higher ed, to be trying to bring out programs in higher ed, trying to support leaders in higher ed. As an adjunct, I'm like the seventh adjunct from the left. I'm pretty distanced from a lot of the pain, but I'm hearing a lot of pain. And I'm imagining, that experience that you're talking about, Greg, of like, I need this solace. I need this connection. I need this support. This stuff is hard. It's hard enough when I have the support, and now that support's going away and it's being polarized. And like, I just want to live my life. I'm just trying to do my thing. I'm just trying to do my best. And now I'm caught up in this, editing myself here, mess. Mm-hmm. Tim, how's that land for you as you think about the community and the aspect of, Greg mentioned this relational piece. We talk in our work about there's an individual component of SEL. I need to learn these skills. There's a relational component, and then there's a communal component. And I know that community is really central to your antidote to these ills. Would you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm glad to do so, Josh. Um, I don't think there's anything more important than the relationships. I mean, I can actually work with anybody, but the real, life affirming, humanity affirming work, right, happens when you're able to have a deeper sense of the intentions of your colleagues, right? Not that I'm not at Ashley's house every day, right? But I know where she comes from, right? I know her commitments, right? They resonate with me, right? Even on our board at AAC&U, we do the kinds of connecting that we think is nourishing for that sort of work, and realize, as Greg said, without that, there's a void, right? But it does mean that we have to, Josh, take a critical look at what it means to be a member of the ivory tower. We are trained to be critical. Every one of us can take any grant apart, any article. I mean, this is how we're trained, right? And part of what comes with that is the kind of mindset that can be, I think, very injurious or have a deleterious impact upon that very essential aspect of the kind of humanity that I think needs to resonate in order for us to really do the kind of work that we need.
I want to bring in Dr. Elias. Maurice Elias is really one of the pioneers advocating social emotional learning, does just incredible advocacy, also a Rutgers team member. And I think that this piece about what you just said, Tim, like when we get into this scarcity and this over analytical and this, like, I don't know, we intellectualize it and we lose some of that humanity. And I know Ashley, yeah, go.
I build on that. I would
Yeah,
love.
I was just going to say, Ashley, over to you.
I want to get in. Because I loved Greg's comments and Tim's follow-up and expanding those out and how we think about students and faculty, and again this whole ecosystem. But in Greg's like beautifully phrased comments, I'm thinking it made me think, we've pointed to the pandemic a lot as like everything changed with the pandemic. And one of the things that was really helpful, I think, from our side at AAC&U was the number of people that said it didn't change things, it catalyzed things. It no longer gave us the option to ignore things. Like there's this wonderful quote by Randy Bass, who's a terrific colleague at Georgetown, that I love from this article he wrote years ago. And the first line of the article is, "Our understanding of learning has far outpaced our conceptions of teaching." We know what works, and we have known what works for a very long time, evidenced by the quotes you're bringing up from decades ago. And I feel like it's just a tremendous inflection point for higher education to decide, where do we want to be in this equation? It's waiting and ignoring is no longer the option. So how do we really embrace that this has been part of our mission all along? We know that this is about relationships. We know that this is about support. We know that this is fundamentally about equity. So how do we lean in the innovative ways that we know we can and bring hope to this equation?
In the work that I do at 6 Seconds, we have a competency called Pursue Noble Goals. And we found that when we center our work around purpose, when we can feel purpose, it shifts everything. And I wonder, what is the purpose of higher education? What would you, if you could just, that wasn't on our list of questions. Welcome to Josh's crazy brain. But what is higher education for? If you could share with us in just, 3 to 5 words, 3 to 10 words, what is higher education for? If it's, let's just go, it's wildly successful. Higher education is phenomenal. We all around the world, we're saying this stuff, it rocks. This is amazing. What's happening that makes it so amazing? What is success?
I want to jump in
Yeah,
real quick
please.
because we've been sharing some great quotes, and I was just spending some time with W.B. Du Bois thinking, and he says the function of the university is, above all, to be the organ of that fine adjustment between real life and the growing knowledge of life, an adjustment from which forms the secret of civilization. I think that's powerful. I won't unpack it, but I was just spending some time with that quote and wanted to sit.
That is way more eloquent than I was prepared to be. Bernardo, what would you say?
I would say, like in the rest of education, we need to make people flourish. We need to help them, bring them all the elements, possible elements, for them to see themselves in the future, not only as one person doing things, but, within a context, your relationship with that context, what elements you need in order to, to get that your option, your what kind of family you want, what kind of job you want to fulfill your profession. If your profession is going to be the same that your vocation, and your vocation is going to be the same that your everyday work. In education, we say that we are privileged in having that many things at once, right? Like vocation and profession and everyday work. So I think it's just to let them know who they want to be in the future. And having said that, what is important of being having a trained mind in order to have the right elements for them to flourish. So I normally compare this with you have this seed, and it's a great seed. It's the best seed you can. And universities, we have these seeds. But what about how fertile is the soil? You have to prepare the soil. Social emotional learning gives you the elements for this soil to be really fertile. So once you get the seed in that soil, it's ready to go up. I think that's part of our role as universities, not only to bring them the seed, but also to make sure that the soil is fertile enough to receive such a seed.
Which speaks to, again, that individual work, relational work, and the communal work. Amy Cranston, thank you. And Maurice Elias. Jasmine, how about you? What is university for?
I agree with what everyone has said. Higher education is not just, you don't go to college to just get your education. You go to college and you interact with the people around you and your professors and your peers, and it's learning from them. You might go to school thinking that I want to major in math, and then you talk to someone and what they said really spoke to you, and now you're doing philosophy. And it's kind of just the idea that you're talking to different people, interacting with different people, and seeing how that affects your life and really defining your life, because you can't define your life. People define your life with you. And higher education kind of just helps you see what you're going to be with your life and what you're going to contribute to society.
I love that. I'm a parent of two 20-somethings, one of whom has not gone back to university after the pandemic, one of whom has. And that's another conversation. But I was the one who's in university. They were saying like, oh, I have to really focus on my classes because that's what I'm here for. And now I hope none of my graduate students are listening when I say this. Greg, cover your ears. Like, you're not here just for your classes. like this is about something bigger than a subject, and it's definitely about something bigger than a grade. Another one from the chat here. It's a two-parter from Deborah Donahue Keegan.
Mm.
And I think this all learning is social emotional. In part 2, in a context. And this piece about how are we developing ourselves? How are we supporting each other to develop as human beings? I don't know. I feel like a lot of universities have lost some of that kind of golden thread. It's like it's become too much about subject and not enough about life.
Well, and there's also the context shifting literally day by day in terms of what can be said, what can be entertained, what kinds of how those relationships get built in context of a learning environment, very, very specifically in terms of the topics that can be engaged. And you've got at least two sociologists on the screen whose intro to sociology has been taken away as an option in one state. Since we're sharing quotes, one of the quotes that I love and I show all the time when I'm talking about what we as an association, how we frame the value and value proposition of what higher education does, is from the great Maya Angelou, who said, "In so many ways, segregation shaped me and education liberated me." Those are my words. The beauty of what we do is to free the mind, is to equip students to think for themselves. And as Jasmine and Greg rightly pointed out, that is because we do that work in concert with others. And we understand and we begin to explore the boundaries of our thinking when we can explore that with others. And so if you take away the ability to have those interactions and have those dialogues, we all suffer from that. It's a smaller world.
I want to bring in Camilla Drummond Foster's quote here, another phenomenal mind opener, heart opener as we think about this. And I think this notion, and Camilla and I have had lots of conversations around mutual liberation. Like, what does it mean to really be stepping out of the systems that separate us and stepping into something different? All right, I'm going to go back to our script here. And one of our questions is what to do. So Dr. Annabelle Jensen, the president of 6 Seconds, one of her favorite questions is, if you had a magic wand and you could make one wish, what would you do in higher education? Bernardo, let's start with you. You have been right on the front lines of this in your institutions of saying, we're going to do something to engage administrators, to engage the system in really working on social emotional development. So for those listening, what's the step that you would recommend as a faculty member, as a student, as an administrator? What's the step to grow social emotional readiness, competence, skills in higher ed?
Well, we made a decision based on previous experiences, and that was not to talk about social emotional learning. We started talking about you as a person. So, these freshman guys, you coming back, 18 years old, coming out from high school, saying, okay, let's start talking about you and why is that is important. Your well-being, your relationship with others. And we didn't give them any theoretical, explanations until the second semester. Once they understand that's something they're really interested in, and that's going to be helpful for themselves as a person, but also for their teaching profession. So what I would say is, let's give people the chance to think about this and to practice this. I mean, to start thinking about meditation, to think about yourself, train your mind. I mean, use the words you want. You use prayer or meditation or gym, mental gym or whatever you want. But start by thinking about how you are how is your relationship with your mind? Is your mind in the same track that you are? Is that what you really want out of your relationships? And what we have found is that these guys who have never heard about this start thinking about an entirely new area, and start discovering things, and they start asking for more. They start demanding more of this. So I would say first step is, let's give it a try. Let's be it optional, nothing compulsory, easy, kind, and see what happens. Because in our experience, that has been a great start to make a program and grows in the best possible way.
So really giving that experience at first. I remember years ago when I was a teacher, a middle school teacher, a Zen monk, said to our students, "How would you describe vanilla ice cream if you'd never tasted vanilla ice cream?" And it turns out to be a really hard question. He's like, "What if you just let somebody taste it?" And they're like, "Yeah, that would work." Greg, Jasmine, let's go to you for a moment. So you have some influencers here in higher education. Ashley and Tim are leaders in an organization of leaders in higher education across the United States and beyond. So let's just throw down some advice for them. Okay, so like you have an opportunity to say to them, look, influence higher education. There's this one thing I want you to get all these higher ed leaders on board with it.
Well, I think a couple people have referenced it in the chat. I think Dr. Elias and some others talked about the importance of context. We tend in academia to kind of exist outside of the socio-political context, right, around us. It's like school doesn't change, but everything around us is changing. So how can this still be a viable entity, a worthwhile entity, right? And no one, right, for the most part, other than Jasmine, no one knows what it's like to be 18, 19, 20 years old in 2024. None of us know. None of us know what that's like. If I could, put myself on blast, when I was a freshman, I had a word processor. We had to go to the library to play with this newfangled thing called the internet. Life has changed so dramatically since that time, and college, that experience can't stay the same. The way we educate simply cannot stay the same. So I think if I'm a university, I'm asking to do two things. I'm asking you to look back to where young people are coming from and what the context is for where they're coming. Right. Most of the young people that are in undergrad right now lost a significant amount of socialization in high school. Many of them that are in college now did not have a typical 4-year experience in high school. Many of them missed milestones that contribute to their social development. And so they're coming into this place under a particularly unique set of circumstances. So we got to pay attention to those experiences. How is it informing and shaping the young people that are coming into school now? And then we have to think about where they're going. What are industries saying about what is valuable? What are things that are important for the next workforce generation? Many folks are saying, we need folks with a high amount of emotional intelligence, with people who can work well in teams, for people who can solve problems, people who can think creatively. And are we creating the folks that industry says that they need, right? Because now there's a growing field. It's like, you know what? You don't even need college. You just go ahead and get this certification. We'll take care of the rest. So there are folks talking all around us. Are we paying attention, and are we shifting accordingly so that universities can still stay relevant?
Jasmine, what would you add?
I agree with everything that Greg said. And I think that a big issue in higher ed right now is the lack of transparency and the lack of awareness. And especially like Greg was saying, for me, I did not have a perfect 4-year high school experience because of COVID. And that did affect socialization and just being able to talk to people. Like, what is the right way to talk to a person now that I have to walk up and talk to them versus just sending them an email? Like, is that what I'm supposed to do? And a lot of the professors, especially because they are older and COVID did uproot their lives, but it didn't uproot their education. They kind of felt like COVID pressed the pause button on life and they're just resuming and everything is back to normal. And everything isn't back to normal because the students that they teach now are a little bit more detached from society and a little more detached from education. And I went from COVID just writing sentences to now I have to write full blown papers and I have to print them out. And I haven't printed anything out for like 4 years. So what am I supposed to do now? And I think just having that awareness in higher education, letting students be transparent about themselves and letting professors understand that and letting professors hear from students would really help with just opening up that pathway between professors and students so they get 100% where we're coming from and they're getting 100% of where they're coming from, and that things have changed and that we have to update our relevancy, but that doesn't mean that we're less engaged. It just means that we need to work together to be stronger. And I agree with what Dr. Elias had said in the chat about integrating SEL for all educators. I think that that is super important because I know that with that awareness and that transparency, every student needs that because not every student is having a great day and not every student is one and the same. And having that transparency allows them to feel comfortable in the classroom and not feel like the teacher is judging them because they're not acting the right way.
Awesome. I just want to bring this comment in, Jasmine. Hearing from you is, as I emailed Deborah Donahue Keegan to share with you, having your voice in this conversation makes this conversation dramatically more relevant in my perspective. So thank you. Ashley, what did you hear from our two students?
Yeah. Well, I will say that Jasmine brilliantly illuminated why I said storytelling for my two hyphenated one word hyphen opening was transparency and relevance. Is we do not tell this story, and we've got a heck of a story to tell. We just haven't figured out ways to do that. And I think for a very, very long time, we have rested on our laurels and not having to. So what I heard from both Greg and Jasmine is that is the imperative. That is the imperative to figure out how we do this and I don't know how we don't, right? Like there's no better environment than a bunch of overeducated people trained in the inquiry process. We really ought to be able to do this and to tell this story. I would add that because I feel like it'd be fun almost as a provocation to sneak this in here, listening to this, but then with this question, the first thing that came to mind, this is going to be highly practical and deceptively sexy, or to Greg's word is going to be deceptively spicy. So here we go. What you do on day one of changing this conversation in higher education is you change general education. You embed social emotional learning into general education, and the core curriculum becomes the vehicle for connecting social emotional learning to labor market skills, to student development, to equity. It becomes the cornerstone. If you change general education, you change the biggest ship you can in higher education. You've just magically changed 1/3 of the college curriculum for everyone.
Wow. I think it's interesting what we define as curricular and kind of co-curricular. And like student life in most institutions is sort of like over here, right? Like, yes, we are the academy, and student life is like, and I think the same thing in K-12, by the way, and in in teacher education, as we think about, well, what is the hard part of this work? What is it that ChatGPT can't do? That's maybe the part we really need to work on. Well, folks, unbelievably, we are coming towards the end of our time. I really wanted to talk about questions around identity and community a little bit more deeply, because I feel like this piece about how we learn in community, how we create community, how we shape an higher ed institution to be a place where people actually feel that sense of togetherness is profoundly important. But we're going to need a whole nother hour just for that topic. But I'm wondering if anybody would be willing to just take this question on. How is this creating a community where we are together, given what Jasmine referred to earlier, and the polarization and the othering that is so big right now in so many places in the world, not just the US. How is that part of SEL? Bernardo.
Well, that's one of the biggest challenges because we are dealing with so many competing issues right now. So people decide to get into SEL because people had a personal experience living with that. Normally, that's what I've seen in so many people leading this effort. So we need to convince people that a kinder place, a kind school, is not by any means a school with lower academic standards. On the opposite, it gives you a much better environment to get a better, achieving process. So I would say that this is the conversation that we are having with so many people. Let us try this because this is not a competing, and this is not less important than math and science. This is what is going to allow your students, and I've seen that in my own family, that's going to give your students a much better situation for them to learn all other things. So I would say let's go for those environments. And following Ashley's argument, we need to start with teachers. I mean, if we don't have those teachers and those principals willing and knowing how to do that, it's going to be really hard. So I would say that would be my starting point.
Greg, could I get your 1 minute or less answer to this question?
Listen, I'm gonna just so for me, stories stick. Raising my daughter, getting her ready for college. One of her closest friends, one of the I think the valedictorian of our school. She gets a foundation scholarship, full ride, 4 years to go to an elite, predominantly white institution. We're all excited. We all cheer her on. We're so excited for her to go to school. She comes home. She's visiting my house during a break. And she tells me about how while she's at school, students were telling her, based on the award, the foundation scholarship group that she's a part of, that she's a welfare student, that she shouldn't be there. And, we have conversations about it, but I realized up until that moment, I mean, she was in a school in the Bronx. She was in a relatively homogenous experience herself. And so she's going into that school, into that new space. We never had these explicit conversations, right? And so for some folks, SEL is also really about survival. It's really also about identity formation and how do we navigate spaces that often don't want to see us thrive. Right. And so for me, I think that's why, to what Ashley was saying, that's why it's so incredibly important for us to be thinking about this in the general education space, why it's so important for us to be thinking about these conversations. And then in the college space, like this is the space where we should be learning how to have discourse that is centered on humanity. This is the space, because outside of this space, we are not having these conversations in a way that centers our collective humanity. We are settling for text bites and sound bites and things that only, harden our stances. And everybody's looking for moral high ground, and nobody wants to center our collective humanity. And so this is college. This is the space where that needs to happen, so that we can have critical conversations, but we can do so from a place where we are recognizing our individual and collective humanity. So it has to happen here.
Well, that is a fantastic note to end on. And I appreciate that. I appreciate you all being here today, and a small exercise in our collective humanity of being able to be together and listen and share. And those of you who have been here on the chat, thank you for participating. And I'm going to just ask Jim to come back and tell us about what's next. And I look forward to continuing this dialogue with you all. And you can all hang out for a minute if you have a minute. We'll hang out till after the stream ends. Jim, take us home.
Wow. Thank you for a very powerful panel. So what I'd like to invite everyone to do right now is think for just a second and then go into the chat and type into the chat just one of your key takeaways from this session. And we'll have a chance to put a few of those up on the screen as we're wrapping up here today. So you heard a lot from that amazing panel, and there was a lot of great conversation in the chat. So now just think about this for a second and just pull out of that, what's just one key takeaway that you had from this session today? There are one of the final sessions of today. We have 2 more sessions coming up. The next one you can go right over to as soon as this session ends. It'll be happening right at the top of the hour. Looking at our theme today of today's students, tomorrow's leaders for SELDay 2024. But the next session coming up plays on that is today's leader, yesterday's youth. And we've got Ariadne Perez, who's really an amazing example of how SEL can help youth today become the leaders of tomorrow. That Ariadne is a former Common Ground High School student from New Haven, Connecticut, class of 2016, and is now the Communications and Design Specialist at the Connecticut Network for Children and Youth. So in this very interactive session that's coming up at the top of the hour, that will be allowing participants to learn more about how Ariadne used these and applied these SEL skills to develop a senior project in high school and has continued to use these skills in college and to prepare for life outside of school. So this is going to be a very interactive session, and I think you saw from this session right now how powerful these sessions can be. So please go ahead. And all right, so let's take a look at some of these highlights from the takeaways from this session. And if we can post those up, that SEL should be a culture, fascinating conversation. Needs to be continued, absolutely. SEL should be a culture entwined in every activity that I put educational institutions. A long historical conversation about the purpose of education. Absolutely. Okay, so lots of fabulous comments. Feel free to continue those in the chat, but let's also pop on over to our next session for the day. So thank you so much for being here today.